Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me here today. We're talking about product development for your clothing brand. In this session, you will learn product feasibility analysis, line planning fundamentals, product calendar creation and tracking, tech pack sampling and prototyping, and more. So I'd love it if you could tag me on Instagram at Glynis Tao and send me a message. Let me know one takeaway or light bulb moment from today's webinar. Just be awesome to know, what takeaway or key learning that you actually got from this presentation today. It'd be great to hear from you. And before I get started, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Glynis, and I am a clothing brand owner turned business consultant, an SEO specialist with 20 years apparel industry experience. I worked for big brands such as Club Monaco, Reebok, and also I had my own clothing design company, which I ran for over a decade. I help creative entrepreneurs build a purposeful and profitable business so they can make a living doing what they love. So I really use my experience that I've gained from working in corporate and also from running my own clothing design company for over 10 years. And that's why, I can relate to what brand owners and entrepreneurs are going through. I have been there, done that. So I can totally understand the types of challenges that you're going through. And I also, when I was working for in corporate, like for the companies, I've done everything. Like I started out as a fabric coordinator at Club Monaco. I worked as a product developer. I was a technical designer. I worked in product management and production. So the whole scope really, from design through to production. So I feel that's my area of expertise, and that's what I'm bringing here today. I am the founder of Chase Your Dreams Consulting, which offers strategy, business consulting, and SEO services for apparel companies. And I'm also the host of Chase Your Dreams podcast, which is available on most podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Breaker, and Anchor. If you haven't had a chance to check out my latest interview, I interviewed American fashion designer Stella Caracassi, who's been in the business for over 27 years, and she gives some amazing insight into the industry. It's just real talk, like it's really amazing, it's powerful, and I really encourage you to have a listen to that if you're thinking of getting into this industry and this business. I've also been featured in the Vancouver Sun, a National Post, the Globe and Mail, and CBC Radio. So I always like to talk about, before you start a business, being able to validate your business idea, like if there is a need for your business. And this all starts with knowing who your ideal customer is. Like, this is so important, and I can't emphasize this enough to anyone who is starting is a business, not just a clothing business, but any business. I would say it all starts with knowing who your customer is and who it is that you want to serve, because it gives you the clarity of the product that you want to produce. Once you know who it is that you are creating the product for, then you'll have a lot more clarity around it, around the product that you designed for them, and also around the messaging when it comes to marketing that product. Who is it that you are addressing it to? Who is it that you are selling to? Let's get into the top 5 questions that every entrepreneur should be asking. First, what's the reason for your business? Why does it exist? Number 2, who is your customer? And this is what I'm going to go over. I'm going to go over part of this today in this presentation, but I actually had a separate workshop that I did that talks about market research and defining your ideal customer and target audience. Number 3, what do you offer them? What is a product that you are solving? Number 4, investigate your market. So do market research and validate. Is there a need for your product and what currently exists in the marketplace? Number 5, what is your business model? How are you going to market your product? What are your channels of distribution? These are probably 5 important questions that you should be asking when you are starting a business. So that's the starting point for any business, like I said, to validate your business idea. Ask yourself these questions, okay? And I actually go more in depth in a separate training that I have that talks about market research and that sort of thing. This is the Boss Up checklist. I had given you a link to download this checklist of 18 essential must-dos to run your business like a boss. And so I put this checklist I put together for emerging designers and new business owners when they are starting a fashion company, a clothing company, a clothing brand. So I really encourage you to go through this checklist. And even if you have been in business for a while, it's always just good to go back and to review things and go through the checklist and see, okay, what things can you check off or what things do you actually need help with? And I'm just going to touch briefly here about target market, who your audience is, and knowing who your ideal customer is in terms of doing market research. Hopefully, if you are in business, you've conducted some form of market research to understand your customers, demographics, psychographics, these types of things. And here's just some of the questions that you should be asking. I'm not going to go through this too much in depth, but really it's important to understand your customer. This is the basis. This is why you're in business, right? And one exercise you can do is to do something like a customer avatar worksheet. And this is like where you would be getting very specific into knowing who your ideal customer is and understanding what their goals and values, challenges and pain points, and being as specific as naming this person and knowing how old they are, their marital status, to be as specific as you can. If you can give this person a name or even have a picture of this person in front of you, the more clear you are, it's just the better it will be for you when you are designing a product for this person. Because ultimately, I like to say that you're not creating a product, but you're solving a problem, right? And the more clear you are as to what problem you are solving, the better you're able to connect and with your customers through all your messaging and every touch point that goes into it, right? And then you'll know what channels to use, you'll know where to sell your product, you'll know what to say in your marketing. It just all comes back to this person. And even when I do SEO, search engine optimization for my clients, I always ask my clients to fill out this sheet for me so I understand the person who's buying your products, okay? And that way I can understand their behaviors, their purchasing, patterns, that sort of thing. So here's an example of a complete customer avatar worksheet. So if you haven't done one, this is what it would look like if it's all filled out. For example, I did a kind of a hypothetical company called Comfy's Loungewear Co., which is a line of sustainable women's loungewear, and I created a buyer persona, a customer avatar. They're all pretty much the same. They mean the same thing, okay, for this person, okay. So get that clarity. Bottom line is be clear on what you sell to your customers. Okay. So let's get into the product development checklist. And now, hopefully, you can have this in front of you, print it out, or you can look at the screen right now. So this is a checklist that I created. Like I use this for my business, and these are all the tasks, the activities that all go around getting your product developed. And product development is really the stage that's between design and production, and all those activities, and probably the most complex one because there's just so much that goes into it, into developing your product line. And so the first thing is, there's some planning involved, and this is a lot of the tools I use were from my days working at Club Monaco and Reebok. I was able to use a lot of the tools from these companies to run my own clothing design company. And it's always important to, follow calendars. Calendars are the most important. If you're going to take anything away from this presentation today, calendars, right? Like the product development calendar, which I'll talk more in depth about in this presentation. Also line planning and creating tech packs and stuff, and how to get ready to go to production. So here is an example of a line plan. I know it's a little bit small for you to see, but this grid, basically, if you are starting out, it may be hard to figure out, last year's numbers and sales. But if you have been in business and you have some sales numbers to pull from, that's really helpful in deciding what to put into your line. And so this is like a preliminary planning tool that you would be putting in, like creating some, working style numbers around it, creating like some kind of name or description that you want to call the products. What are your colors, the fabrics that you're planning to use, and approximate quantities. So that's why there's a column there that says last year's sales, so you can compare. And so you can start planning your line here. And just figuring how many styles you should put into your line. So that's something I used. And then the next thing is going to the calendar system. And so with product development, there is so much, that's involved. You need to make sure things are moving along and progressing, keeping on schedule with deadlines and deliveries. So really, one thing that's really important is to know what your deadlines are. Perhaps if it's, when your product is launching, when you need to have samples ready, or when you have to have your orders back, when you have to give your factories the purchase order for your production, and when you have to have your production, when your production will be ready to ship. So this is a little like trick that, we used to do at Reebok, and I was the product manager there, managing the licensed apparel line, like the NFL, NBA, CFL products lines, and we were really, lean, mean team there, only 3-4 people. And so, we were very efficient, and the only way to do that and to hit our deadlines and deliveries was to have proper planning and calendar system in place. And so what you can do, and this is pretty simple, is to, at the start of the year, is print out a whole year calendar and have that in front of you. And we always had this calendar, pinned and so had it somewhere in front of us, because everything is like, you starting here, you can use this to calculate like your deliveries and start doing sort of like a work back calendar. And so say, for example, if you are planning to have your order production ready for shipping by say September 1st, if you have a fall launch, then you'd have to figure out what is your lead time for your production. So then you would work backwards. So if you need your production by September 1st, you work back, say if it's a 2-month lead time or a 3-month lead time, depending. And usually for fall productions, factories are usually slammed. It's probably the busiest time production for them. And so that's why when you are talking to a factory, always ask them, what is lead time? And specifically say if it's you're looking at a fall delivery, it could be longer, right? So check in with them and tell them I'm aiming for fall delivery, then what, like say September 1st, then what would be the lead time? Realistically, say 3 months, if that's the case, right? So you'd have to give them the order by June 1st. And also you have to allow for shipping transit time. So whether you are producing your goods domestically or overseas, your lead times would be different. And overseas production will require longer lead times because you have to factor in the shipping, right? So shipping, I would probably give it another month buffer. And that's another thing, is to buffer in your time to allow things, for example, things may go wrong. And it's almost always like you rarely have any kind of order that everything goes smoothly. That would be a miracle if that ever happened. But even in my 20 years working in the industry and working as a production manager and stuff, like for the big companies, even on repeat orders of things that they've produced before, we found issues or errors or whatever, like, right? So that's why you need to give yourself time and buffer in case anything is wrong and needs to be fixed. So if we're working with that time, say June 1st is when you have to give your orders to the factory. You need time to prepare for that. Say if you have to order fabrics, right? You have to put your order cut sheets together. With domestic factories, typically they don't provide fabric. You have to order your fabric and have your fabric shipped to them. You have to have your patterns and markers done beforehand. So maybe you need 2 weeks time, right, to get all that prepared and have everything sent to your factory by June 1st so that they're ready to go. So then you're working back another like 2 weeks or so. And so really, if you're placing orders with customers, and if you're doing wholesale, you probably have to put in like, a May 1st kind of order deadline. Okay, so that's why, with the whole product development cycle, fashion, it's like you're working almost 6 months to a year ahead. So that's why, a lot of the trade shows happen around Feb time. And so you're placing orders then, and you get about 2-3 months to get everything together. If you put on your order form, May 1st is your order deadline, then you have about a couple weeks to compile all your orders into your production order, and also get any stragglers that come in. And then you may also order a little bit more if you want to have more inventory on hand. So you got to plan for all of this stuff. Okay, so that's what the importance of this calendar is, because that way it's like, okay, go work back, go back. And so from this sort of bigger picture snapshot here, this will kind of dictate what your tasks are going to be, because now you can go deeper into more detail by using like this product development timeline. Okay, so like I'm giving you very simple tools like spreadsheets for people maybe like me who are not as techie, but if you like to use project management softwares, that sort of thing, you can also do it that way. But this is just to illustrate, the process here. And so having your deadline, you would place that onto this product development timeline. Like say if you had your September 1st shipping deadline or your order production deadline, sorry, the production deadline would be September 1st. You place that here on the calendar, say not, September 1st, what's the action, production order due, and who's responsible for that, what's the objective, and your notes, and then what the status of. You can start with these like key dates, place them on this calendar, and start to work backwards. So once you have your production order deadline, then you could say production orders sent to factory. Then you say, fabrics need to be shipped to factory. Markers have to be, and patterns have to be shipped to factory by when. Fabrics, have your samples ready. And then you're like, okay, when I have to, what's the customer order deadline? When do I have to have samples and prototypes done? When do I have to, start creating tech packs? Blah, 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 blah. It just goes on, but that's how it works, right? So that way you work backwards, and then you're like, okay, now I know I have these dates in place. Now I know what I should be working on. Okay, because just flying by the seat of your pants doesn't really work that well. This is because you're at a greater risk of missing a deadline and potentially having your orders canceled. So that's why you don't want to do that. You want to plan ahead of time and make sure you have these calendars and schedules all done in front of you, because it's going to save you a lot of the headache and wasting time making mistakes that can be time costly and wasting your time. So this is like, we are using this system at Reebok. So I'm telling you, right, this works. So going back to this checklist now that we've talked about the importance of calendars, why you need them, I can talk a little bit about, the things that go into like the stages now, getting your product from idea to production. So the next thing you want to do is sketch out your designs or your line, and having it done on a technical drawing, like done on Illustrator, is probably the best thing to do, because you want it to be very clean. So using computer software to do your technical drawings is important. Then you can create your style sheets. Your style sheets can be individual sheets with your line drawing, but also it could indicate details on it. And so these are things that start to make up parts of your tech packs. So the tech pack is really like the whole blueprint of your garment, and that includes the page with the drawing with your technical sketch and the details of your product. So you'd have your style number, your description, your fabrics, your size, that all on the front page, right? And with your sketch, that's on the first page. The second page is usually your body measurements. So you would have all your body measurements depending on the size, right? That sizes. It could be either numerical sizing or alpha sizing, which is a number sizing, like small, medium, large, extra large. Having your body measurements figured out, and as a brand, you want to be consistent with your measurements, although there is really no industry standard when it comes to sizing body measurements for each brand. It kind of differs, and even I mean, it's frustrating. I've come across brands where even the same brand, their clothes fit differently. So keep having some kind of like standardized body measurements for your brand. Develop this, like, you could develop it by researching other brands, uh, your competitor brands, or something that you find that fits well for you. You can check their sizing. You can look up their size charts online. You can even go and buy samples, measure them all. When I started my kids line, I actually was following the Gap Kids sizing. I went and I bought like the entire size run of Gap Kids samples of hoodies, and I went and measured them all. So I was able to get the grade, the grading, which is the amount that each size goes up or down, right? So you need to know what the measurements are. So from your body measurements, you want to figure out what your grades will be for every size, right? So then you have that. You create your spec measurements. It would have basically all the measurement points of the garment on there. You know, your back length, your shoulder, your sleeve length, your neck opening, the front length, like whatever it is, right? Whatever you're creating, you need to have those spec measurements. And again, like I said, if you don't have anything to go by, purchase samples as a starting point, measure them, at least you got something. Okay, so that's that. And then you would have the next part of the tech pack would be something like a bill of materials, or like a trims page, which indicates, you know, what types of trims go into it. If you need buttons, snaps, zippers, where your labeling goes, your hang tags, application, any like, you know, stitching details. It's like pretty much all the details go into that part of your tech pack. And then you would have probably the last section. So tech packs are generally like, can be about 5 to even 10 pages long, depending on how complex your garment is, right? So on a very highly technical garment would probably require a lot more detail in it, even like stitching lines and where, you know, your finishings, you know, all that detail on there, because when factories, they're using that to follow, right? So you want to make sure you have all that information on there. The last part would be your comments page. So the comment page is like, when you get your sample back, you will be comparing all the measurements from the sample garment to your spec measurements. You measure everything out, and then you note any like discrepancies, and if it's off by, you know, however much, then you would note that to the factory or to whoever's doing your patterns, like these are some of the changes and corrections. And then you'd have like, you know, you'd have keep track of like all the notes, right, and the corrections and changes of your on your comments page. And hopefully, you know, it doesn't require more than 2 or 3 sample iterations and changes. But this is the part where it's hard if you haven't been trained in this area in terms of the communication that's happening between your pattern maker and your sewer. And ideally, I recommend finding a place that does both in-house, like your patterns and samples are done in the same place. If a factory, hopefully if the factory does it, not all factories have pattern making capabilities or in-house pattern making, marker making, you may have to outsource your pattern making and sample making. So some people are joining us. That's the thing, right? If you can find an in-house factory that does all of it in-house, it would be ideal, because there is less back and forth communication. And also I recommend doing your pattern making samples, so in getting your prototyping done domestically, if you can, if there's a, you know, someplace in your city that does it, it's just easier for that communication. You can be there, hopefully see what's going on, communicate any of the changes, rather than if you were trying to develop something overseas, there's first that language barrier, right? And also the timing, and then of them sending samples to you, and this all this back and forth time that will just take a lot longer than if you go and develop your samples and prototypes domestically. Okay. It may cost a little bit more, but I feel like it's just less stress and headache. And yeah, and so what I was saying about the samples and the pattern maker being together is because the sample sorter can communicate any changes to the pattern maker. So the pattern maker can make the changes to the patterns based on what's happening in the sample. Okay, this is so important because I had this issue where I was using an outside contractor that was only doing patterns. They didn't do sample making. I was using a factory to do my sample sewing. So when the samples, when the factories cut the pieces out and started sewing things together, they were like, well, and I found like I was making a pullover that wasn't going over the head. So then the neck had to be changed and it had to be reshaped and stuff because there was also a hood that went with it. So all that stuff. So then I had to go and communicate those changes to the pattern maker. So which was in another location. So I had to take all my stuff, the sample, go to the pattern, tell her, okay, well, this needs to be corrected, but I'm not the one sewing it. So I'm like, yeah, I don't know how much they took, right? The sample sewer took, whatever. And I'm like, it just turned into a big headache and I had to end up fixing it. But at least I know this stuff, right? And I was able to communicate it and get it done, but it was still a big hassle. So try to get your patterns and samples made in the same place, if not in the factory. Okay. And so then you have your samples and your prototypes ready to go. They're all hopefully all fitted. And then that's usually, then you want to get your costing done, right? That you're able to go and figure out what your costs are, because when you are talking to factories, generally they may be able to work off tech packs, but most of the time they require a sample so they could see the sewing steps that go into it, like where top stitching and all this stuff needs to happen. So that's how they are able to come up with the cost. And so that's when you bring it to the factory. Another part I didn't cover was the fabrics, the fabric sheets and lab dips. So this is the part where if you're starting out, most likely you may not be doing custom fabrics and you're not lab dipping. You probably will be sourcing fabrics, existing fabrics in the market from various wholesalers. And so, but if you are able to meet minimums, usually on fabric mins, they are a lot higher for doing custom, if you're doing custom dyed. So then you go through the process of getting lab dips made, and they send you these like swatches of fabric, and you have to check to make sure that they match your fabric standard, your swatch. So it's always good to match your fabric, it's the fabric to fabric. Don't use like a paper swatch or Pantone or a screen. I've seen the mistake where people like reference a Pantone color they found on the computer, they found online, and they're like, and then they get their fabric, their lab dip back, and it's like way off. But you can't match because every screen is different. Right? You need to have the real swatch in front of you, and you may need to invest in ordering something like a swatch. This is from Pantone. You don't need to get the whole book because that's like really expensive, but you can get the individual swatches of that and send that to the factory, right? Or the mill for your lab dips, because then you're measuring, that's apples to apples, right? You're looking at the same thing they're looking at. So that's, yeah, that's if you're doing like custom, like fabric dyeing and lab dips. And then, yeah, so then you'll get your all your costing back. You make sure you put it all onto costing grid, because this is the next important thing, is understanding your costing, how much things cost, so you know how much you should charge for, and then knowing what your margins are. Okay, so your margins are really important. And it varies, but generally, like for apparel, usually if you're doing wholesale, it's like a double. So it's from a gross margin point, it's 50%. Okay. Um, so from wholesale to retail, then you probably have your own cost. So from your cost to the wholesale price, if you can get 50%, that's awesome. If you can get more, it's better. Like I tried to go between 40 and 50% like margin, just so that to make sure that you're profitable. But in the beginning, you may not hit those numbers because you may not be making as much in your production. So your costs probably reflect that. Initially, your factories may give, if you're planning to do a low run production, your costs will generally be higher than, say, if you were at scale, making like 500,000 pieces, right? You get better price breaks. But the thing is that, when you're starting off, you don't want to be at risk of having too much inventory on hand. And so you may have to, take a little bit of a hit on your margins, make a little bit less margins, but you won't be stuck with so much inventory, right? And that's a big problem with product-based businesses, that is the inventory, right? It's where all your money is going to get tied up. And I know I've had, I've been good at managing my inventory. I've had like, $30,000 worth of inventory there. And I'm like, oh, you feel, you're like, I got to sell this stuff. Like, there's my money. You're seeing your money right in front of you. And you're like, I got to sell this. But just in the beginning, like try to just, produce lower quantities, maybe make less, but at least you're in that testing phase, and you're never going to get it perfect the first time anyways. So as you're testing, you're getting feedback from your clients, customers. That way you can make these improvements for the next run and slowly build that up, right? Because you're trying to get proof of concept with as little risk as you can. So that's what I have to say about that. But yeah, and then so in terms of forecasting your buys, like if you're new to business, you're not going to have the numbers or the data. So how much are you going to purchase, right? You may just want to have to make the minimums right now, depending on your factories. And there are factories that will do like low run production, 50 pieces, 100 pieces, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, so then you have to figure out what your fabric consumption is. That usually comes with the part where you're getting ready to send your stuff over to factory for production. You would need to get markers made. And so markers are like the big, it's like done on a plotter. It's like they take your pattern pieces and they like jigsaw it all, like Tetris, the pieces all together onto, like, depending on the width of your fabric. And this is where the computerized like marker makers need to do this, is they can calculate the layout, the most ideal layout for your patterns. So your patterns, sorry, after you got the initial proto sample pattern, you also have to get your patterns graded, right? And so they have to grade the sizes for every single size, make the pattern pieces, and then they take those and then they have to like put it onto this marker. And so that's what the marker is, what the sewer, the fabric cutter uses to cut the fabric out, because they're not like going to be hand cutting, they're going to be laying out layers and layers of fabric onto a big cutting table. putting the marker on top and then following that to cut. And so that's why the markers have to be like very, like it's efficient to make sure that there's least amount of wastage as possible in your fabric, so you're not wasting a lot of fabrics. And so that's why you need to know the yield. Okay, so that number is what's going to tell you how much fabric that you need to order. Okay, so you need to get that number, get it from your pattern maker, has to go onto a cut sheet, then you got to do calculations and figure out how much fabric you need to order based on the order, production order. So that's that. And then once you have all this figured out and you have your orders sent out to the factories, you want to be able to keep track of everything, right? So to have some kind of system in place, even a simple tracking grid will be really helpful. And knowing which stage you are with the production, knowing what's been ordered, knowing what your deadlines are. So you can also create some kind of like a spreadsheet tracking system. And, you know, the last thing I want to talk about is creating filing systems to keep all of this organized. Because now maybe, you know, you didn't know what you didn't know before this presentation. And now you're like, holy crap, I didn't know I needed like all this stuff. So you need to organize this, have file folders, all, you know, files system set up where you can keep track of your orders, your production bulk orders, your fabric orders, your cut sheets, your all the templates, your specs, your everything, your costing. Make sure it's all organized, because you have to go back and look for the stuff later. It's like gonna be, you know, a nightmare. You're like, what did I do? And I'm telling you, it's like, it's better to just have a system like put in place from the beginning. Okay, so that really wraps up this portion of the presentation. So yay, congratulations, you made it to the end of the workshop. Thanks for being here and taking the time to learn this information. You showed up to the webinar and have been here with me, hopefully taking notes and already excited and ready to take action on what you've learned today. So now that you know the necessary steps to turn your ideas into reality, you see why this process can be confusing for new brands entering into apparel production for the first time. But I'm here to tell you that it's possible to launch a cut and sew apparel business, even if you are brand new to business, even if you're on a tight budget, and even if you don't have formal fashion training. Was this information helpful? Please give me a yes in the chat box if you learned something new today about the product development process. Yes, I learned so much. Awesome. So before I get into some of your questions, let's recap what we've covered in this webinar. We've covered the fundamentals of line planning, what's in a tech pack, and the importance of calendars. The key takeaway from this is the importance of calendars when it comes to product development. I do encourage you to create a work back calendar with your important dates and fill in the other dates and actions to reach that goal. And you can use the template I provided. And so who's ready to take action? Let me know in this chat what you plan on applying to your business right away. Oh, I'll send you the template. So I'd love to invite you to go deeper with me in my Label Launchers Mastermind group. This is a mastermind community for fashion entrepreneurs and clothing brand owners. Like, I made the program affordable because I know all the expenses that go into running your apparel business. This allows you to keep your costs fairly minimal, but still get the support from someone with experience who's been there and can relate to what you're going through. The Label Launchers Mastermind group is designed for fashion entrepreneurs and clothing brand owners who are looking to get more done and grow their apparel business. You showed up today looking for a solution, and this program was created for you. The Label Launchers Mastermind group will help you go from confusion and overwhelm to clarity of how to launch, build, and grow your brand. What's special about the program? This is a genuinely collaborative experience, and we are working together as a whole to support each other in reaching our goals. With the mastermind, there are mini masterminds, so everyone is supporting each other. There's plenty of peer-to-peer support. In addition, you'll have access to the Chase Your Dreams Slack channel to communicate with myself and others in the program. You'll get customized tools, resources, and content specific to the needs of people in the mastermind. So exactly like the tools that I've given you today, like, you know, there's the customer avatar worksheets, there's the calendars, there's the checklist, there's, you know, there's even more stuff. Like, I will give you those, like the cut sheets, the tech packs, all this stuff, right? So that's part of it. You'll also get rewarded for following through with the things you commit to in your business. So we make accountability fun and want to celebrate our wins together. And cutting the time it takes for you to reach your goals is my primary goal. The master classes are hosted by me and guest mentors and are designed specifically for members who are in the program. I spend my time getting feedback from the members to ensure that all content is relevant, meaning you won't waste your time in the membership with course materials that aren't what you actually need to grow your business. The best part is that you'll have access to my 20 years apparel industry experience, 10 years working for big brands such as Club Monaco and Reebok, as well as running my own clothing design company for over 10 years. Now, I'm not going to pretend I'm the only expert out there on fashion entrepreneurship. There are others who help people, but what makes working with me different is I discovered what the key stumbling block was for people who are struggling with not having an action plan, not knowing exactly what to do to work on, and what action steps are most profitable. And I also ran a clothing design company for 10 years, so I can relate to what you're going through. In the Label Launchers program, you will get, it's like a private Slack community, so you get to use Slack to communicate with me. You get custom master classes. We'll go deeper into any areas that you need help with. We do weekly group coaching calls, and there's one on Thursday, this Thursday actually. You'll get access to client learning portal, which all the recordings will be in there. In addition to additional training videos, I have in there as well. Like market research, I have, time management one, planning. I have one on garment manufacturing. So you get that, all the resources, accountability groups, and access to group mentors. This program is for you if you have been in business for less than 3 years, you need help finding an audience and building brand awareness, you have confusion around what you should be doing to move your business forward, you want to make more money and grow your business, you are not sure where to get your products made and how to talk to manufacturers. This program is not for you if you are not ready and willing to take massive action to build a wildly successful clothing business. And you are okay with wasting time figuring out things yourself and willing to make costly mistakes. So the cost of the program is $250 a month for 3 months, and then you can continue going month to month after that. So here is the link to enroll. It's just, hold on, I have the, oops. Sorry. I'm going to put it in the chat here so it's easy for you. And so you just have to, all you have to do is go in. Oops. There's the link right there. So what you have to do is just, so go to the sales page. So it's this info@glynistao.com /group coaching with Glynis, and fill out the questionnaire about your business and hit submit to go to the checkout page. And once you enroll, you'll receive a welcome email with the instructions on how to access the learning portal, where the recordings will be saved, and you get links to the templates and resources and the Zoom meeting link. And you'll be able to start connecting with other members in our private Slack community. So do you have any questions for me in the chat? I am open to taking questions, either about the program or about anything that you learned today. I'm just going to read that the organizational processes are one of the most important things to meet goals and make the business successful. So many expensive mistakes can be averted by having a plan and knowing what to avoid. Yeah, those are, yeah, those amazing words. Like, you are totally right, Shanti, about that. Systems and processes, you know, I live by that. And this is the thing, right? Like, I feel like where my strengths are is the foundation part, building the foundations and teaching you the fundamentals of building and growing your apparel company. Okay, because I've been there myself. I developed all these tools and systems myself. I have it all, and I use that to run my own clothing company for 10 years. Okay, and just to be really organized and having that process is so important, and you can avoid just, yeah, making mistakes. How can I make tech packs? Yes. So yeah, we could go over, like, in the program, I will cover tech packs. Actually, we'll do a workshop on tech packs and how to make a tech pack. Yeah, this will probably have to be like a whole other workshop because there's a lot that goes into that. But I can teach that. And that's something that I would cover in the program. Shanti says, I think one of the things that is very challenging for new brands are things like where to find a pattern maker sample, or where to find low-min fabric sources, low-min factories. You go over this in detail in the workshop. Yes. Before I end the presentation and stop screen sharing, I just wanted to give you my contact information. So if you want to reach out to me after this this workshop is over, you can reach me. And my email is hello@glynistao.com. Instagram is @glynistao. Again, I'd love to hear from you. DM me, you know, any key takeaways that you got from this program. I love to get feedback, so I can take to further future workshops that I'm doing. And also, if you have specific questions regarding the program and wondering whether or not the program is right for you, then I encourage you to book a call with me. There is my Calendly booking link.